So in this video, we're going to look at the if statement in terms of pseudocode. So this is a general layout of your normal if statement. So you're going to have if, then some condition, and then if this condition is true, you're going to then say then, and then any command that you put below the n will then be performed by the program. And then end if to indicate that your if statement is finished. So just as an example of the if statement, let's say for example you want the user to type in any two numbers. So we could have under input variables num1, num2. So in other words, the user will be given an opportunity to type in two numbers. So for example, they might type in 7 and then hit enter on their keyboard. That number 7 will then be stored as num1. And then they might, for example, type in 10 and hit enter, and that will then be num2. So an if statement, for example, in this case, to check which of these two numbers is bigger, and then to also tell the user, you can say if num2 is greater than num1, then if this condition is true, if num2 is greater than num1, then it's going to do this command. It's going to display back to the user num2 is greater than num1. Remember, the comma isn't actually a comma in the text that's going to be displayed to the user. This comma is like the and symbol that we use in Excel. It combines num2 with the text is greater than, and combines num1 to the text at the end as well. And then end if to indicate that this if statement is complete. And then if num2 is not greater than num1, then the program is just going to ignore this then part. So once it jumps down to after end if, it's then going to have a look at another if function. So if num1 is greater than num2, then it's going to print out that num1 is greater than num2. So we're just going to have a look at this in Word just as an example. Okay, so here we have it in Word. So let's just fill in num1 and num2. So say for example the user on their keyboard types in num1 as 2. So whenever we see num1, we will then put 2 in its place. And let's say num2, they type in 10. So for example, it's going to jump down to this if statement here. So if num2, which now is the 10, is greater than num1, which is the 2. So if num2 is 10 and num1 is actually 2, this statement's true. 10 is greater than 2. Then it's going to display num2, which is 10, is greater than num1, which is 2. So in this case, this line here, displayed back to the user on the screen, will be 10 is greater than 2. This exact statement will be displayed back to the user. So this, in red, will output this. So like we said, the comma isn't actually part of the sentence, so it just combines these texts and numbers together to form a phrase, or a sentence, or a statement. So then, it's going to then end the if, so this will then be complete. It's performed the command it needed to. And it's to say, is num1, which is 2, greater than num2, which is the 10. So is 2 greater than 10? So this is false, this isn't true. So it's not going to do the then part. It's just going to jump straight down to the end if, and then the program will be finished. So that's an example. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this is just another example of the if statement. So if number 2 is greater than number 1, then divide the second number by the first number. Else divide the first by the second. So the user will type in two numbers. They'll be stored under number 1 and number 2. And then f can be a variable that, for starters, can store the value number 2 divided by number 1. So in this little line here, it's assumed that number 2 is greater than number 1, because that's the condition in which we are dividing number 2 by number 1. However, in this if statement over here, if it's not true that number 2 is greater than number 1, this will reverse it so that we are dividing the bigger number by the smaller number. So if number 1 is actually bigger than number 2, then we're going to make x become number 1 divided by number 2. And then end if, so this if statement will then be ended, and it will then print the value for x. So in Word, I'll just show you an example of this. Okay, so here's the program in Word here. So let's say, for example, number 1, let's say the user types in 10. And let's say for number 2, they type in 70. So this very first line here is going to take number 2 divided by number 1. So number 2 is 70. And it's going to divide it by number 1, which is 10. So this is going to give us 7. So here we do have that the second number is greater than the first number, and the program was trying to divide the bigger number by the smaller number, so this value for x is correct. Because if it goes to this if statement here, it says if number 1, which is 10, so we're just going to say it's 10, is greater than number 2, which is 70, this is not true. 10 is not bigger than 70. So then it's not going to do the commands in the if statement. It's not going to do anything between the then and end if. So it's going to skip this part completely, and it's just going to go straight to printing x. So x in this case, it would just print 70 divided by 10, 7, or print 7 to the user. However, if number 1 was 70, and number 2 was 7, for example, then number 1 would be 70, number 2 would be 7. See, this is not what we're looking for. We're not wanting to divide the smaller number by the bigger number. So this if statement here is going to correct this value for x. So if number 1, which is 70, is bigger than number 2, which is 7, then it's going to take x to be equal to number 1, which is 70, divided by number 2, which is 7. So this is true, so then the program is going to do this line over here. So it's going to take number 1, which is 70, divided by number 2, which is 7. So x would be equal to 10. So at the end of this if statement, after end if, it's going to go to this line print x, and x is 10, so 10 would then be displayed back to the user.